Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Harvey Oberfeld, retired but still issue-engaged TV reporter. Welcome to the show, Harvey.
Good to be on.
Harvey, we're going to talk about two things today. First of all, the election call on Sunday by the Prime Minister and how you're not very impressed with the NDP leader's presentation out of the box, and also the changing face of Vancouver's television ratings. Well, first off, Mr. Mulcair did not impress you when he did not take any questions from reporters after making his opening and closing statement about the election call, which is sort of shades of Prime Minister Harper, who doesn't like to answer reporters' questions either.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's that they don't want to answer questions. I think it was an off day for Mulcair yesterday, and of course, you have to zero in on it when he does have an off day like that, because this was the first day of the campaign, and you can't avoid the fact that he made a statement, a very lengthy statement, in English and in French, and then he just walked off the stage. I have no time for stinking questions type of attitude, and I think that surprised me, and I wrote about it on the blog, because he's not like that. He usually takes lots of questions. He handles them very well, but I saw a certain arrogance and maybe nervousness, and certainly that was a strategic decision not to take questions, and I think it was a mistake, especially on a day when Harper, who hates to take questions at any time, he took 5, and of course there was Justin Trudeau in Vancouver taking as many as you wanted to throw at him. And being with my reporting background, I like that better than the other two for sure. But it's early in the campaign. I have a feeling the NDP will be smarting from the reaction of lots of people to Mulcair's handling of it yesterday, and once he gets going, he will take all kinds of questions, because, as I say, he handles them quite well, and he makes his point. I just hope the media will start demanding specifics. It's all very good to say, I want to help the middle class, or it's all very good, but, we have to take on the economy. It's all very good to say, we have to do something about the environment. But I think in this kind of a campaign, we want to know what specifically will each of the parties do, how much will it cost, where are they getting the money, and how will it affect our taxes. I mean, that's it lined up there, and I hope the media will actually try to get those specifics and not just take the clip du jour promising apple pie to everybody or a chicken in every pot. Except for vegans and vegetarians, they'll have to have an alternative in the modern-day campaign, and then letting them run with it.
Well, when it comes to truth in broadcasting, we have a prime minister who insists that he has a balanced budget, yet the parliamentary watchdog says he has $1 billion deficit. So are we going to get the truth out of the candidates anyway?
Well, what they say, of course, is that, give it time. You're looking at it at one segment. Wait till the end of the fiscal year. Well, of course, that's going to be well beyond the election. So, go prove them wrong after, but that's, Harper is clearly going to talk about the record. I'm not so sure the record is as good as he believes it is. I think a lot of Canadians are not noticing themselves doing so well over the last 5 or 10 years. And then the other parties, they could promise anything because they haven't been in power, so they could say they're going to do this and do that. But again, it's a matter of what are you going to do specifically, and how is it going to impact us? I just noticed I must be in a very strange electoral group of people, because in all my life, every time they've announced programs or assistance for various people or tax cuts, I almost never seem to qualify for anything. It's always, I've earned too much. I'm not, I don't have the family kids at home now, that would qualify. And I don't seem to qualify for almost anything they announce. But I'm part of the larger group maybe who pays for it. So, I want to see the specifics. I want to see, what they're going to propose, and specifically, how they're going to pay for it.
Yeah, that always seems to be the bugaboo. And even when we have a running prime minister who should know how everything should be paid for, he doesn't seem to be all that clear on it either.
Well, I think the fact of the matter is, so much depends on the world and global economy. We're tied into it so completely. And the fact is, there's a lot of things going on in the global economy that, governments really can't do much to affect. I mean, we're at the, we're at the mercy of what happens with the American economy. We're at the mercy of what happens in the Chinese economy. And we get impacted by it. But, the problem is the politicians pretend that they could change everything. And really, there's very little they could do. They can tinker. They can add programs. They can add some incentives. But, we're such a huge resource-based economy. When the United States economy goes down, we feel it. When the Chinese economy, the Asian economy goes down, we feel it. And even the European economy, when it's having problems, we feel it in different ways, financial ways, fiscal ways, what they can spend, all this kind of thing. We're impacted by the world in which we live. And the politicians of all parties try to pretend as if, vote for me and I've got the solution to everything. Well, I've yet to see one that does.
Of course, the world doesn't stop because there's an election campaign in Canada. What about the Trans-Pacific Partnership that they thought would be all signed up, and now we hear that Japan wants to protect its auto industry. Canada, I don't know if they want to, but the dairy farmers are saying if we have this, we'll have foreign dairy products in here and that'll wipe us out. Should we be in a monstrous trade agreement, which, by the way, can wipe out your local laws if they hurt international commerce?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes they do give exemptions for things like that. Now, people were saying that the Conservatives were counting on that deal coming together before the election so they can announce it. I'm not so sure. I think they may be breathing a sigh of relief, because if there was stuff contained therein that affected let's say, the Canadian dairy industry, or any of our protective things on dairy and pork and beef and all that kind of thing, I'm not so sure that would have been good for certainly the Conservatives. So they may be secretly happy it did not come together before the election, and that could be good news for them, because I'm sure whatever the deal would have come up with, the opposition would have said, "Oh, it's the worst deal ever. They've sold us out." I mean, that's what they do, right? So I was surprised it didn't come together because of other countries having objections to certain aspects. But I think this is probably, the Conservatives are probably breathing a sigh of relief that it won't come together before the election.
I know we don't directly vote for the Prime Minister, but that's the way people think. And maybe we should have a separate vote. Who would you like to be your MP and who would you like to be the Prime Minister?
Well, they have that in the American system, right? You vote for the president. But we have a parliamentary system, so you can't do it that way, because what happens if you ended up with an NDP House of Commons and a Liberal Prime Minister? We see how productive that's made government in the United States, that system. So I think I like the British parliamentary system. I personally think we do best with a minority government. That's just been my experience, because when you get a majority government, I think Harper is total proof. I've written about this many times. He became very arrogant. He became a dictator, disdaining that he would even answer questions, disdaining that giving the public the right to even seek information, prohibiting public officials from speaking. I mean, this is just, that's not the way I see leadership in the form of a prime minister. So I personally like minority governments, and you get it in the British parliamentary system. The American system, I think, is just, the proof is in the pudding. Look what they've got. They've got deadlock now. They've become so atrophied in the way their government operates that I certainly wouldn't opt for that system.
Speaking of atrophy, that looks like the Prime Minister's solution to the Senate. Just don't appoint any new members.
Well, I think that's going to turn out to be illegal. I don't think you can do that in the long term. It's probably going to get him through the election, and then if he gets elected again, he'll be able to, he'll change his mind, I'm sure. If he doesn't get elected, then he leaves it up to the other parties. and it will be really interesting. Let's say we had an NDP government. It'd be very interesting to see whether they would also not appoint any members. I have a feeling you'd find a lot of Labour leaders being appointed to the Senate, and Mulcair would probably say, well, I want the Senate abolished, but as long as it's around here, I have a responsibility to allow it to function. And he would pack it with his own supporters, and I'm sure so would the Liberals. So it's all just grist for the mill, what they say and what they do sometimes before and after an election is quite different.
We'll have more with Harvey Oberfeld right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with retired television reporter Harvey Oberfeld. Harvey, the local television scene in Vancouver, a changing face of who people go to when they want to find out about the news.
Well, they should have listened to me at Global. I'll tell you, I've written several times on the blog about how their product has been really not getting worse. I mean, there's no other way to put it, and at least in my view. Their hiring, I think, in my personal opinion, has been dismal. They've hired a lot of inexperienced people who can't write, can't report, can't ask questions, know no background. I mean, they basically broke the mold that made BCTV so successful, because if you'll recall, BCTV, I mean, we had the homeliest looking group of people on the air, but they were all seasoned journalists, seasoned reporters with proven records. And that's what they taught them how to do TV, including myself, and the public responded because they liked the stories, they liked the investigative stuff, they liked the creative writing, and something has happened in the last 20 years with the different ownership changes that took place. It's been downhill all the way. And now they're paying for that. What they have is they have a lot of inexperienced people on the air, who, I mean, I don't know if they know anything about the background of many of the issues that present themselves to us that are in depth at all. So what they do is they send them out to cover the crap. They send them out to cover, the accidents and the fires and the tragedies on the street and the shootings and all this. That's very easy to do. But you can't expect, and don't forget the dog in the is it the cat in the tree or the dog in the pipe? I keep getting them confused. And what happens is people they do two things: they turn it off, or they start PVRing the show and they speed through it and they just don't watch most of it. Well, now it's kind of come home to roost. CTV was all aglow this week because one day last 2 weeks ago, they actually beat Global TV at both the 5 o'clock news and the 6 o'clock news. They beat them in the ratings share. And then CTV they were sending out internal messages, and I happened to get one, that July was their best month on record, that they actually closed the gap so significantly with Global to like 1.46. Like, for example, Global's July average, according to CTV, was 3.61 ratings points, and CTV at 2.15. Very small gap. And a ratings point is really the portion of the televisions that are on being used or watching those shows. That's almost nothing. I mean, Global used to have overwhelmingly beat CTV 5-1 and 6-1, and now they've closed the gap. So they're all celebrating at CTV, and I know they had a meeting down at Global where the reaction was that the reporters better pick up their socks and start doing better stories. I don't think the problem is just the reporters. The problem are the people who hired those reporters. The problem are the people who seem to be running the news and seem to be quite willing to accept a lesser product. The writing has been abysmal in some cases, certainly boring in many, many cases. And the stories they've chosen, Basically, a lot of it, you just read the morning paper and you'll know what's going to be on the news, maybe developed a little bit that night. But where's the investigative stuff? Where's the entertaining stuff? For example, and I wrote this in the blog, I pointed out they did a great story, could have been a great story a few weeks ago, about all the houses on Cambie Street that the developers have acquired, and they're all languishing there until they get ready to go ahead with their development. The grass is overgrown, it's quite messy. So what do? They go out and interview a neighbor and then one or two people, and that was it. I would have gone to City Hall and said, what are the bylaws? I also would have probably, if I were still working, I would have walked into the developer's office with the cameras rolling and said things like, well, you've got a very nice, fine office. Why don't you start taking care of the properties you have down on Cambie Street? See, that's entertainment as well as informative. That's providing real news, not just quick, let's get it done, show a couple of pictures of the properties, and then that's it. We just go away. And their political reporting, I don't really think it's reporting anymore. It just seems to be some sort of analysis. When was the last time you saw them chasing down a politician, a cabinet minister, demanding answers for anything? It's all just, it's boring. And now the ratings are showing it. CTV, which isn't so great itself, but in the world where everybody else out of 10 is only a 5 or a 6, all you have to be is a 7 and you become the winner. So that's what's happened, and CTV has done very, very well in the ratings. They're having their best ratings ever. And I'll give you an example, Jim. Here's what somebody at CTV was saying. In July of 2012, Global had a lead by 4.3 shares. In 2013 July, that dropped to 2.9 share. 2014, 2.7 share. And this July, 1.46 of shares. So this is really a dramatic drop. And they're worried about it now at Global, and I've told them, I've written about this quite often. And what has been their reaction? Not that, oh, well, we better improve the product, you're right on, thank you for your expert sort of view of it. A lot of them they just hate me for pointing it out. It's like I'm the traitor for pointing out how bad things have become. And really I'm just trying to keep it real and tell it the way it is. And there used to be a time in the news where telling it like it is was what it was all about. But apparently now, if you shine the light back on the media, the light they shine on so many other people so critically, you shine it back on them, they don't like it at all. But the facts are now there. The facts are showing that I was right all along, and I don't take great happiness in that, but I just hope that they will do something to change. And somebody told me there is change coming. They have a new news director. Jill Kropp has taken over as the news director now. And this fall she will start doing things because they're going to get a new assignment editor too. So things are changing. Things may improve, but if they don't improve, then they're going to be in the dumpster. They could end up being number 2 after being number 1 for so many decades.
And Harvey, too, if they get a new assignment editor, and I know how important that position is because they really do decide what you're going to cover that day, not the news director, is don't just berate your reporters, but make sure your reporters feel confident that you'll back them up and give them the proper resources. And I know you expressed concern that having the 24-hour news station is taking away from the flagship station.
Well, the thing is, you have to have reporters who can do it. If you have young people who just, they just want to be on TV and they sure look good, but if they don't know the historical background of anything they've covered, it's not just politics but business or the economy. If they don't know anything they're covering, how can they go out and ask tough questions of land developers and people at City Hall running issues? The assignment editor is an important job. And I once described it because I was the assignment editor temporarily there for a while when they had some changes go and somebody left and they put me in the job. I did it for a few months and they actually did come to me and say, would you be interested in doing it permanently? And I said no. It's a very stressful job. But I once compared it to flying a 747. You're the captain. You come in at 6 in the morning and you decide where you're going with the plane that day, What's the flight going to be? What are you going to do? And then the passengers arrive, and that's your entire staff, and you direct them, and everything gets sent out. And if the plane lands safely at night with a great show, you get the credit. If the plane crashes, it's your fault, the assignment editor's fault. But the assignment editor requires staff who can carry out. There's no point saying, well, I want to go work on some investigative piece about increased pollution in a particular municipality or something like that. If the person has no ability, doesn't even know how to start, and has to look up the word investigative before knowing what they're supposed to do, it's really a challenge. The problem there, I believe, has been in the hiring over the last several years, and also now they've had retirements and buyouts, so some of the senior people are gone or going, and it's going to get even worse. And what they're left with are people who really have great difficulty in doing anything that seems to me to be anything that requires investigative or, very difficult questioning. And then when you see what they write and how they write, they have no imagination, or if they do, they're keeping it hidden.
And also, I wonder, too, I'm sure cameramen who are very key have retired and been bought out, too, because it's really a two-person team when you go out in the field. If you don't have that cameraman who's got that seventh sense about why is that guy standing alone over there taking pictures when nobody else is paying attention to him, maybe he knows something I don't.
Well, it's the cameraman, it's the reporter, it used to be researchers, too, and it's the editor. It all comes together. And, and then when it comes together beautifully, it comes together beautifully. But now, the trend in the industry is to hire a photojournalist, somebody who does shooting as well as reporting, and will then edit the story in his laptop or her laptop. Well, I've seen stuff like that go to air because I still have friends there at the station. And I phone them, I say, what was that? Because I'm not a visual expert, but I can see some of the shots they take, and it's quite funny. I just start laughing. I think, what did they just take a picture of? So it's all just, put together. I mean, I can imagine how awful it would be if I went out and shot the story myself when I was reporting, and then if I went and edited it, it would look like garbage. It would look like home movies gone astray. Well, that's what, you really need an expert cameraman who takes the pictures and knows the pictures and tells the story in pictures. But then you need the reporter to be able to write to those pictures and know how to use the pictures and let the story be told through the pictures with the writing. And then you need somebody who can go out and do an interview without basically just saying, so what do you want to say about this, or do you think about, and we'll also shoot back at the person they're talking to if the person delivers to them, junk. We'll shoot back and say, but you're not answering the question, or what about this? Well, there's none. I don't see it on the air, and I think that's the problem. Is much more than just the assignment editor, but they will get a new assignment editor at Global this fall. There is a new news director. They're well aware that CTV is coming on and has actually beaten them a couple of times now. I just think we're going to have a great season of fall television viewing to watch them battle it out.
Well, at the BCIT 50-year reunion, I asked CTV anchorman Mike Colleen, why are you doing so much better in the ratings? And he said, Jim, we just try to keep it simple and to do simple well. I
believe the CTV model is they sort of imagine their audience to be a single mother with a couple of kids, somebody living in the suburbs, maybe, 30 years old, 35, 40 years old at maximum. They're trying to reach a different audience. They don't believe that the future really lies in serious political reporting or in-depth stuff. They have a different thing. Now, I object to that because I think people in their 30s and 40s, they're not brain dead. They get interested in real issues, but so I keep getting into big arguments with people from CTV whenever I blog about that. But I have to admit it, their ratings are up and Global's ratings are down. So maybe there's something in that, even though it may not be great reporting. But if it's working, it's going to be much harder to get them to go back to the old ways.
Yeah, and I think a real loss to CTV will be Linda Steele, who at the end of this month goes over to CKNW Radio to do their afternoon talk show. And kudos for them for getting her. So maybe she felt her days in TV were numbered. Or perhaps NW has found maybe they do need a new kind of voice.
I have no idea. I don't don't know why she left or what. That's something I followed.
Well, it's blown a huge hole in CTV's programming because not only is she leaving the local news, but she was doing Steel on your side for CTV Network and also on the Business News channel. So, it's a hole in CTV's programming with her leaving.
Yeah, I don't know, and it depends what they fill it with. I'm not. All I know is I look at the numbers. They've been doing well. They've been doing better than Global, and that should be of great concern to Global. I wish Global well. I mean, it's my old alma mater, and I wish them well, and I've tried to tell them in the past many times on the blog about, this is not good. You got to change, and maybe they shouldn't have gotten so mad at me. Maybe they should have started listening.
Harvey, thank you very much for chatting with us.
You're welcome.
My guest has been Harvey Oberfeld, retired but still politically and issue-engaged television reporter. His blog site, keepingitreal.ca. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Check out our popular YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.